Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody, wherever you're listening to this webinar. Um, this is a Shakti Dialogue, part 2, with Dr. Sampadananda Mishra. He and I have been listening to him, actually. It's his masterclass, effectively, I noticed, on uh, Sanskrit and its connection to yoga and as language as a path to achieving connection with our divinity and the states of that beautiful divine consciousness, which is Ananda. There was a very beautiful part one that we recorded yesterday, and where Sampatji shared his personal journey and then talked about the power of Sanskrit and its connection to yoga and to integral yoga, Mother Sri Aurobindo's work. So today we are going to go into mantra, which is derived from the Varnamala of Sanskritam, and which is the alphabet of Sanskrit. And specifically, we are going to understand from Sampatji not just his scholarly understanding of the three major mantras of Sri Aurobindo and the mother, but also his lived experience and his understanding and the impact of these mantras on his own being, so that we can also learn and understand how to experience that power. So the first mantra I would like you to talk about is Sri Aurobindo's Gayatri. So why don't you proceed with that? And we will use the next 45 minutes to also in the same time discuss the mantra Om Anandamayi, Chaitanyamayi, Satyamayi, Parame. And finally, the Yoga of the Cells mantra, which is Om Namo Bhagavate. So if you could pace yourself to these three over the next 45 minutes.
Namaste. So these three very significant mantras which are given to us by Sri Aurobindo and the mother, they are an integral part of any integral yoga seeker. In fact, when questions were asked to the mother and Sri Aurobindo about whether this nama japa or any kind of mantra practice is allowed in the practice of integral yoga or not. So we have confirmation from Sri Aurobindo and the mother how the practice of the mantra, the nama japa, those are extremely beneficial in our sadhana, and especially when we are absolutely in the beginning stage. It all depends upon when we come to mantra yoga. Basically, mantra is a very powerful tool. Look at the beauty of this word mantra. It is composed of these two sounds, man and tra. Tra basically is a suffix in Sanskritam. So, which is used in the sense of a tool. Like you have the word netra, which means eye. So, tra means a tool or means for being led. Ni is the root sound. So, that which leads is a netra. Similarly, you have a vessel for drinking or eating, which is patra. So pa means to drink, tra is a tool. So mantra, man means to contemplate, to concentrate. All the different activities of the mind are referred to by the word, by the root sound man. So mantras are extremely powerful sounds which work like a powerful tool for bringing the mind into a state of silence. It connects us, it prepares us to be connected with the pure sound, pure vibration. then the joy comes, then the tranquility comes. It is all about like every sound. So that's why it is said in the tradition that amantram aksharam nasti. It means there is no sound which is devoid of mantric force. But one has to get connected, one has to feel the mantric force and hold it within one's own consciousness, the force of that mantra. Because every vibration, everything in this creation has a nucleus of its own, that core vibration, which is the mantra of that object, that person. So when we go deep, when we grow more and more aware of ourselves, and we have that connect with the things around, any object or person or anything that has manifest in this creation, so we can almost feel the vibration, the purity, the force of that nucleus. So to touch that core vibration and that nucleus is the like one of the significant aspect of the realization in sadhana. And there are mantras and mantras and mantras, enormous amount of mantras. But there are mantras which are absolutely at the top level. There are mantras which are very general kind of mantras which have a general impact. But on the basis of that, there should not be any kind of attempt or attitude towards distinguishing this is the greatest mantra and that is the greatest mantra. This mantra is valueless or that mantra is more powerful. Nothing like that. It all depends upon who is utilizing the mantra in what purpose and what is the inner attitude, what is the level of sincerity, what is the level of aspiration, what is the purity in purpose, how much dedication and concentration one has, with what perseverance one does it. It all depends upon that inner preparation, that inner purity. Then it works. These are the necessary conditions for any mantra. So when Sri Aurobindo was asked to give a new mantra for, there was one sadhak, so he requested Sri Aurobindo if he could get a new mantra uh, for his grandson's sacred thread ceremony, Upanayanam. And this is how the mantra, the Gayatri mantra, which is known as Sri Aurobindo's Gayatri mantra, was given to us, given to that person, but through that person to the whole humanity and all those who are open to that mantra. So it is called Gayatri mantra simply because it is in Gayatri meter. The metrical pattern, the physical framework of that mantra is in Gayatri pattern. So Gayatri is a pattern. At the same time, Gayatri, there are certain these patterns in, say, like when we come to the symbols, when we come to the yantras, these are also patterns. So when you create something like a symbol you draw, it becomes it's a pattern, right? And similarly, every chanda is also a pattern. So every yantra has its own devata, has its own force, because every pattern also has its own energy. The same way, there are certain patterns in poetry which has its own energy, which has its own devata. So the realization of the seers and sages is that this Gayatri pattern is a force by itself, and it is also known as the Veda Mata. The Gayatri itself is known as Veda Mata because it is the mother pattern. It has more powerful. It is more powerful. So that is why, like in rituals, we have all kinds of Gayatri, Vishnu Gayatri, Durga Gayatri. So without the Gayatri mantra of that particular deity, the puja, the ritual is not that complete or that effective. So that is why it has been worked out that there should be Gayatri mantras for every deity. So Sri Aurobindo's Gayatri is in Gayatri pattern, which has 3 lines, and each line has to have 8 syllables. So total number of syllables in Gayatri is 24. Therefore, in Sri Aurobindo's Savitri, the total number of lines you have 24,000. So, yeah, this is also another significant thing about Sri Aurobindo's. Why 24,000? So now, what is this? The content of this mantra. The content of this mantra is Tat Savetur Varam Rupam. This is the first line. Jyoti Parasya Dhimahi is the second line. Yanna Satyena Deepayet is the third line. So all the 24 syllables are in these three lines. 888. Tat Savetur Varam Rupam Jyoti Parasya Dhimahi Yanna Satyena Deepayet. Let's go to the word by word meaning. And this meaning is important because unless and until we know the meaning, it is hard to hold the force of the mantra in consciousness. Okay. So that is why Patanjali in his Yoga Sutra says the mere japa will not do. Tad japa tad artha bhavanam. So we have to do the japa, at the same time hold the meaning of that in our consciousness. Artha bhavanam. Visualize and then hold it in the vision, hold it in the consciousness. Then it becomes very effective. There are many shastras which speak about like we should know the meaning of the mantra. So then we are able to contemplate it, because chanting a mantra, reciting a mantra is not just, some kind of utterance that one has. So in mantra, when we are doing the mantra recitation, it is called mantra ucharana. In Sanskritam, it is called Uchcharanam. Uchcharanam is, people translate it invariably as utterance or articulation, but it has a very deeper meaning. Uchcharana is not mere articulation. If you look at the word Uchcharanam, Ut means up, Charanam means rising. So along with the prayer, my soul, my consciousness rises up. Uchcharana. So the consciousness also has to rise up along with the sound. Then one has the efficacy of the mantra one has in one's own consciousness. It is not mere articulation, it is Uchcharana. That is why it's extremely important that when we talk about our tradition, our shastras, we should use the terms which are created by the rishis that will have more impact than a translated version of that. But we should understand what is the interpretation of that. Uchcharana is not articulation, Uchcharana is not pronunciation, Uchcharana is the soul's upliftment along with the sound. So we do the mantra Uchcharana with the meaning. So it is a meditation by itself. It is a concentrated energy in gathering of the whole consciousness and focused on the force, on the meaning. It's a very powerful meditation. So Tat Savitur Varam Rupam. So Tat refers to that. Savitur, that Ra changes to Savitu. That means of Savitru Deva, of Savita. So Savita, though it is A ending, many people confuse it as feminine. Many girls also are named after Savita, which is wrong. Savita is masculine, like Pita. You say Pita, Vidhata. It's all masculine. So the base word is Savitru. Like the base word for Pita is Pitru. So Pitru becomes Pita, Savitru becomes Savita. So that's Savitru Deva. Tat Savituh Varam Rupam. Varam is great, supreme, the best, the highest. Even if we want to interpret this word Vara, then we can connect it with what is said in the Upanishads, like Tat Kalyanatamam Rupam, Tatte Kalyanatamam Rupam, the most auspicious form. So Varam Rupam is the most auspicious, or the greatest, or the most, the best, the supreme, the greatest form of Savita. Tat Savitur Varam Rupam Jyoti Parasya.
Can you also explain Savita?
Yeah,
What is Savita?
yeah, I'll explain that. So Savitu Varam Rupam. So that great form, that best, that supreme, that auspicious, most auspicious form of Savita. Now, Savita is usually translated as the sun, but it is not the physical sun that we see, but it is the spiritual sun, the creative sun, the creative force behind it, because the word Savita comes from the root sound Su, means to create. So it is from the same root sound one has the word Prasava, Prasuti. So these are all related to the creative energy. So the creative force of the sun, the spiritual sun, is Savita. And it also manifests, it also has a form of its own. And this form can be seen, can be perceived through the yogic eye, not with the physical eye. When one develops that third eye, that yogic eye opens within oneself, so one has the visualization of that form. And that's again is indescribable, avarnaniya, anirvachaniya, inexpressible. So only it's a matter of realization, like one realizes within oneself and holds it within one's own consciousness. So Savitur Varam Rupam Jyoti Parasya, and it is the Parasya Jyoti, it is the Jyoti, the light of that supreme, the light of that supreme, that Dhimahi we hold in our consciousness, we hold in our mind, or we meditate upon or contemplate upon. Dhimahi. The sound dha in Sanskritam means to hold, to grasp, to cling to. So clinging to, or being focused, or contemplating, meditating upon, holding it in the consciousness. What? Parasya Jyoti, that supreme light. Yat nah. Together it becomes yanna. So yat, that which, nah means to us, satyena, with the truth, with the force of the truth, with the light of the truth. Deepayet, may it kindle us, may it enlighten us, may it diffuse us with that brilliance of the light. So may the diffusion of that brilliance, that effulgent light, enter into every aspect of our being, and it enlighten us, every aspect of our being, in totality, not just in any one part of the being. So the whole being getting enlightened or illumined by the light of the truth. This is what is the prayer. Now, one more important thing in this, like if you go to the Vedas, every Veda mantra has a rishi of its own, has a chanda of its own, and has a devata of its own. Right? So when we take the famous Gayatri mantra of Vishwamitra, so there the rishi is Vishwamitra, the chandas is Gayatri, and devata, the deity, is Savitra Deva. And in Sri Aurobindo's Gayatri, who is the rishi? Sri Aurobindo himself is the rishi. And what is the meter? Gayatri is the meter. But who is the devata? Is Savita the devata? No. It is not Savita as the devata. It is Parasya Jyoti, that supreme light. And that light is none other than the Divine Mother. Because it is a mantra to awaken the consciousness of the Divine Mother within oneself and get connected with that. And that Divine Mother is the light, is the truth, is the form, is Para Prakriti in the higher hemisphere, in the Parardha. He is the Para Prakriti, she is the Para Prakriti, she is the Divine Mother, because of whom the creation is possible. So it is the supreme reality brings out the creation through the mother power. Without Para Prakriti, no creation. Without the mother, that's why Sri Aurobindo say, without me, he is unmanifest, and without him, I do not exist. So that supreme mother, that divine mother is the Devata in this mantra. And this was when Kapali Shastriya, he wrote in Sanskritam the commentary of it, and then he had shown it to Sri Aurobindo. And this was mentioned there, that Rishi Sri Aurobindo, Chandas Gayatri, and Devata Parama Mata, and it was approved by Sri Aurobindo. It is approved by Sri Aurobindo. And Kapali Shastri, he would not say anything without the approval coming from Sri Aurobindo. That was his sincerity, his loyalty to Sri Aurobindo. And he was a Vedic scholar, of traditional Vedic scholar of very high order. He left Vasishta Ganapati Muni and joined the ashram with Sri Aurobindo. So this supreme light is none other than the mother. And we contemplate, and this light is nothing but the truth. In the scripture also, like in the Shastras, the ancient Shastras, in the Vedas, in the Upanishads, you will find that the truth becomes the light, manifests in the form of light. There are lights and lights and lights. So every light, like there are light which just are used just to dispel the darkness, but they're cool. They don't have the heat in it. But the original light has heat in it, has tapas in it, the power of Agni in it, the power of Surya in it. At the absolute supreme state, it is the Surya Savita. And at the physical level, it is Agni. But it works at every level, from inconscience to superconscience. The presence of this light is everywhere. So therefore, the Divine Mother, being that truth, being that light, is present in everything and being and happening in this creation. That is why when we chant this mantra, we have to feel the presence of the Divine Mother in everything and being and happening in this creation. And it has such immense power. And when we recite it, we have to recite with the sound Om. And Om is a very, very powerful, the potent sound, potential sound, the essence of all sounds. It's a combination of the sound A and U. If you look at from the physical articulation point of view, A starts from the first position and U ends with the last position. So between A and U are all sounds, and no two vowels can remain separate from each other. They get blended with each other. So A and U together becomes O, and then Ma brings the conclusion, the mantric force holds the concentrated energy of all the sounds within and makes it more concentrated sound. So that is why after end of every mantra you hear that sound that the pure nasal sound. So Om is the Ekakshara Brahma, one unit of sound, not to be broken like Ma. Many people do that way. For our understanding, we can contemplate separately on Ma, but while it has to be chanted, because the Gita, the Upanishads, anywhere you go, it has been described as Ekakshara Brahma, that one single unit of sound, Ekakshara. So, and while chanting Om, one also has to feel that unity of consciousness, that everything is one, that oneness, feeling of oneness has to be there. And the mother says, when Om was, and she was initiated to the sound Om, she felt and very tangible feeling. Her description of like what is the power of Om, she says like when things are not well, just chant Om, all will go well. It's such a simple sentence and such a practical thing for every one of us to do it in our day-to-day life. keep chanting Om. You're not feeling happy, chant Om. Chant Om before you eat your food. Your food will taste nice. It becomes tasty. Even the untasty food also will, feel tasty. Chant Om before you start your work, end your work, before you go to bed, after you have, when you get up from your bed, chant Om. She says all will go well. Then she says a very, very significant line, which is, to me, I have read interpretations of Om, so many names of Om. There are PhD papers on Om, and there are so many interpretations, books, shastras on Om. But this one line, what the mother has given, it connects you like anything. This is the best interpretation. What is it? She says, Om is the signature of the Lord. That everything in this creation comes by His sanction, His signature, and that is Om. So that is why when we chant Om, we must have that feeling that the presence of Om is there in everything and being and happening. Om is the supreme light. Om is the divine mother. Om is the supreme truth. Om is that unity of consciousness. It is the sound of unity. It is the sound of oneness. It is the sound of equanimity. It is the sound of the divinity. It is the sound of all energy, all power. So that is why it is prescribed that before one chants any mantra, has to chant Om, and it has to end with Om. So we will just do this Tat Savitur Varam Rupam with Om once, and then move to the understanding of the rest of the two mantras. Because if I go on explaining even this one mantra, we can talk about a full day. So there's so many things to be shared about each and every aspect of this mantra. So this here goes the recitation of the mantra. Om Tatsavitur Varam Rupam Jyoti Parasya Dhimahi Yanna Satyena Deepayet. Now we move on to the next very significant mantra given to us by Sri Aurobindo. And this is again the mantra of the mother. Om Anandamayi Chaitanyamayi Satyamayi Parame. There are 4 words here. In fact, 4 attributes. Even we would not call it attributes, though it looks like attributes from the ordinary point of view or at a surface level, but it is the truth itself. It is that self-existent truth itself which has all these qualities. Not even qualities, like it is that. It is that. So it contains these 4 words: Ananda, Chit, Sat, and Parama. It is the reverse of Sat, Chit, and Ananda. Sat, Chit, Ananda is our highest self. Our entire existence is in 2 parts. One part is called the Aparardha, the lower hemisphere, where the bhu, bhuvah, and swa, the physical, the vital, and mental at the individual level, bhu, bhuvah, swa at the cosmic level, at the universal level. This is the lower hemisphere, the aparartha. The higher hemisphere is called parardha, where it is the world of Sat, Chit, and Ananda. Between these 6 grades or steps of existence or states of existence, there is a link world which is known as Vijnana Jagat. And in Sri Aurobindo's terminology, or from the Sri Aurobindo's integral yoga perspective, it is the supramental, the Mahas. So one has here the Bhurloka, Bhuvarloka, the worlds connected with these principles, the Bhuloka, the earth, Bhuvaloka, the Antariksha, the mid-region, the Swarloka, the heaven, the world of light, then Maharloka, the world of light, the world of truth, the world of supermind, and then Jana, then Tapah, then Satyam. Janaloka is the world of creation, the creativity. Jan means to create. So then Tapa, which is the what is called Janaha, is the Ananda, because Ananda is all creative. Creation is all about Ananda. Then you have the Chit, which is the knowledge, the truth. So that is why the Janaloka and Tapaloka. It is all about the action, all about the energism, the dynamism, the tapas, the chit, the awareness, the conscious force. And then you have the Sat, the Satyaloka, the world of truth. Now, this is the 7 levels of our existence. So the ultimate aim of our life is to manifest and realize our Sat Chit Ananda Swarupatva within ourselves. So that parardha, what belongs to that higher hemisphere, has to manifest in the lower hemisphere. So the spirit has to infuse itself into the matter. The matter must get transformed into the spirit. So this is where this Anandamayi, Chaitanyamayi, Satyamayi, Parame is a mantra of transformation. Transforming the whole matter into the spirit. The mantra to invoke the mother in her highest form. Why it begins with Ananda? Why the whole order is reversed? If you look at the Taittiriya Upanishad, it says about all the levels of kosha, Annamaya, Pranamaya, Manomaya, Vijnanamaya, and Anandamaya. It doesn't speak about the Sanmaya and the Chinmaya. Why? Because Anandanna Parolabha, the greatest gain is Ananda. It describes that everything comes from Ananda, lives in Ananda, and merges in Ananda. So that is why the Leelamaya, the playful, supreme Purusha, is all Anandamaya, he is all blissful. And this is this bliss which is at the basis of the creation. So everything comes from Ananda, because Ananda is the source, and this Ananda is not devoid of Chit and Sat. Sat, Chit, and Ananda, they are not 3 separate, cannot be separated. The Ananda is there in Sat, the Chit is there in Sat, the Sat is there in Chit, the Ananda is there in Chit, Sat is there in Ananda, and Chit is there in Ananda. This is inseparable, it is the unity of consciousness. So Only the unity reigns in that world of Parartha. But Ananda is at the basis. Sri Aurobindo has uh, a small Sanskrit text attributed to him called Sri Aurobindo Upanishad, and where the whole Veda, the seers and sages of the Veda, they address the whole humanity as Amrutasya Putra, the children of immortality. Sri Aurobindo ends that Upanishad by calling the whole humanity He Anandasya Putra, the children of Ananda. But in a deeper sense, Ananda and Amruta, they are same, not just equivalent, but there is no difference between Ananda and Amruta. This Amruta is, Ananda only gives the immortality. Chandas gives the immortality. This Chandas is nothing but Ananda. So Anandamayi, Chaitanyamayi, Satyamayi, Parame. And this also refers to this Parame. Like look at the beauty of the word Parama. Parama is the supreme. She is not just supreme, she is beyond the beyond. In Lalita Sahasranama, there's a beautiful name of Lalita known as Parat Para. She is Parat Para, beyond the beyond. Beyond her, there is nothing. And what is this Parat Para? Now, the world in which we live is the mutable world, the world of change. Everything changes here. So, the world of Kshara. Kshara means anything which decays, which changes, which is on move. But in this change is not all about this creation. In this change, there is a changeless element which supports, which sustains this change, this mutable Brahman. And that is the Akshara Brahman. And that Akshara Brahman, which supports the Kshara, which supports the change, which supports this mutable Brahman, that immutable Brahman, which is the support, which is the Adhar, which is the sustenance factor of the mutable Brahman, is not all, not the supreme. Beyond the Kshara, beyond the Akshara is the Purushottama, the supreme reality, which has, which manifests, when it is, when it self moves, no one commands it to move and become this creation. It is moved by itself. And it moves. When it moves, this whole movement, he cannot move just like that. There are certain mechanism which is needed. Like electricity is there everywhere. The sound is there everywhere, but we don't hear all the sounds. We don't, we need some channelization. That supreme reality is all powerful, the omnipotent, the omnipresent, the omniscient. But to manifest, for the sake of manifestation, it has to follow a certain mechanism, the limiting mechanism. And this is where the Paraprakruti comes to the role. That without the Divine Mother, without the Paraprakruti, this manifestation cannot take place. So, the Divine Mother is supreme at that higher hemisphere in the form of Paraprakruti. And not that she is the supreme, she is beyond the beyond. She is Parat Para, Parame. And when we recite this mantra, Anandamayi, and look, in Sanskritam, the word is, the mantra, how it is given is Anandamayi. The last E is short, not long. Satyamayi, the last E is short. Or Chaitanyamayi, the last E is short. And Parame, it is not Parama, it is Parame. So all these words are in vocative case because the mantra is given to us to invoke the presence of the Mother, the Supreme Divine Mother. And when we recite this mantra, when we say Om Anandamai, the entire being has to be filled in with that felicity, that joy, that bliss, because he is all Anandamai, all blissful. That truth, that Chaitanyamai, Shiv, the same truth, the same supreme reality, it becomes the Ananda, again manifests in the form of the Chaitanya. She becomes the Chetana. When this Chit comes with all its force for the sake of manifestation, it becomes the Chetana. Ya Devi Sarva Bhuteshu Chaitanyatya Vidhiyate. She is called the Chetana in everything and being. Sarva Bhuteshu. In all beings she resides. She lives in the form of Chetana with that conscious force. Chaitanyamai. And she is Satyamai. She is that self-existent truth. Satyamai Parame, the Supreme. So we need to carry this whole sense while reciting this mantra. And if you, while reciting, if you prolong the short vowels and it becomes Anandamayi, Chaitanyamayi, you lose the force of invocation. It becomes description that she is Ananda, full of Ananda. She is full of Chaitanya. She is full of, that becomes description. So one loses this power of invocation. The mother presence, the divine mother is invoked through this mantra. So with this little explanation, let's go for the recitation of this mantra. Om Anandamai Chaitanyamai Satyamai Parame. Om Anandamai Chaitanyamai Satyamai Parame. Om. This is just a plain saying of the mantra, but if someone would like to add little more melody to it, rhythm to it, I give another version here, which also can be followed. Om Anandamai Chaitanyamai Satyamai Parame. Anandamai Chaitanyamai Satyamai Parame. Om. Then we move to the third most important mantra, which is recognized by the Divine Mother as one of the greatest mantra, the mantra of cellular transformation, the mantra for the yoga of cells. Om Namo Bhagavate. It's a mantra which has been there for ages and ages. We don't know, from time immemorial. This mantra is there in the tradition. And usually, Om Namo Bhagavate is associated with Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Vasudeva Krishna. And Vaishnavites, the devotees, followers, lovers of Krishna, Vasudeva, Vishnu, they keep repeating this mantra. And what touched and what revealed to the mother is just Om Namo Bhagavate. The word Bhagavate is in the fourth case, if we go by grammar, because this namas is offered to the Bhagavan. The base word is Bhagavat. And it is necessary that why mother felt that this is the mantra for the cellular transformation or pursuing the yoga of the cell. The word Bhagavat, as we find in Bhagavan, Bhagavati, is Vedic in its origin. In the Vedas, when we go to the Rig Veda, there is a deity who is known as Bhaga. The Vedic deity is Bhaga. In the Vedas, one doesn't find the use of Bhagavan or Bhagavati, just the Bhaga. And this Bhaga, as we find especially in the interpretation of Sri Aurobindo, he has given a psychological, esoteric interpretation of the entire Veda, which is very, very consistent and practical and doable in our day-to-day life, the practice of the Vedic system of yoga. So Bhaga is that element of our consciousness, the human consciousness at the individual level, and that element at the cosmic level, which gives us the power to enjoy. Because this world, you ask any realized soul this question, and this is a big time question, and this question has been asked by thousands and thousands of people, $1 million question. Why is this creation? The only answer that you will get is for enjoyment. If the world is for enjoyment, enjoyment of what? Enjoyment of the delight, the ananda which is ever existing in everything and being ever existing. There's not a single fraction of moment when this ananda doesn't exist. Because if it doesn't exist, the creation will not exist. So the enjoyment of this delight, now take a simple fact that everyone here wants to live. No one wants to die. Even the most suffering person, he also makes a prayer just to live, even for a few moments. Even in that acute physical pain also, there is still a ray of hope of living in this. One feels sad going or leaving this body because one wants to enjoy. Because this sense of enjoyment, the sense of ananda is so powerful that we do keep experiencing this at certain moments, and we know the taste of it. That is why we don't want to leave. So ananda, this bhaga, is the power which creates, which strengthens, which manifests the true sense of enjoyment of this delight. That is why Bhagavan is all delightful. And this delight, this ananda, the experience of ananda, every moment in everything and being, is very much necessary for the cellular transformation. Each cell has to feel that ananda. And it's very clear when we read what the mother has spoken about the cellular transformation and the yoga of the cell. Each cell has to be infused with that ananda for its transformation. So Namo Bhagavate is again a submission, and it is not just an invocation, but a complete surrender of oneself. Because the word namas doesn't mean that you bow down, you prostrate, Namas comes from the root sound nam, means to blend, to become pliable, to remain plastic, devoid of or free from all kinds of shrinking, hesitation, rigidity, obstinacy, not in any part of our being. There should not be a single part of the being where there is any reservation. The being in its entirety is open, like a flower. It completely opens itself to the light. So it receives maximum light, fragrance, softness, freshness, vibrance, everything it receives to the fullest because it is completely open. So namo, this word namas, it demands that we, while saying namas or namo bhagavate, we completely remain open without any shrinking, any hesitation. Then one can experience the ananda. Why a flower attracts? And there is so much of freshness and there is so much of ananda in that. Not only that it itself has the ananda, but it also radiates that ananda. It shares that ananda with others. That is why mother, in a very simple language, for practice in sadhana, she says that be like a flower. That one simple sentence is enough for our practice. Be like a flower, frank, open, unreserved. So when we have that utter plasticity in our being, that is what is the state of complete surrender. So then the divine, there's so much, like this plasticity is so total that the way divine wants to mold you can mold you in any form, any shape, any manner. That is the plasticity that we have to carry in our consciousness. Then we become a true channel, not just instrument, but a channel through which the divine energy can flow. Complete emptiness, like a flute. It has nothing, it is just emptiness. And the divine can play the grandest music through that emptiness. That channel. When we say Namo Bhagavate, we completely open ourselves and manifest that plasticity in every part of our being. Then the Ananda, that immortality, that Amrutattva will fill our entire being. This is how we can transform ourselves. The complete Rupantara, complete transformation or a Purna Rupantara can take place by this complete surrender. So that is why Sri Aurobindo's yoga is not just Purna Yoga, it is also Rupantara Yoga, it is also a Purna Samarpana Yoga. So with this, we will chant this Om Namo Bhagavate. Om Namo Bhagavate. Om Namo Bhagavate. Om Namo Bhagavate. धन्यवाद.
This was so sublime, Sampatji. I've been having tears in my eyes right through, as if the soul has been touched. And we will close here today holding this beautiful vibration that you have elevated us into. And we will share on the YouTube link all the details and further explanations that you may have people to read if they want to know more. Deep
No,
gratitude.
no.